The Bluecoats. They're a household name if you follow the drum corps international activity. The corps has captured 2 world championships at the time of recording, and is consistently a top contender within this elite marching arts activity year after year. But it wasn't always this way. After months of research, I believe that I have figured out how and when the Bluecoats became a true contender in the drum corps world. In order to understand their current success, we need to go back to 2004 and their show, Mood Swings. On the surface, this may look like any other drum corps show of the time, but it marks a behind-the-scenes turning point for the corps. The Bluecoats got their first full-time director during this calendar year. What happens when someone gets to devote their entire year to making the Bluecoats an amazing organization? Well, you get a better product. It may not completely show this year, but give it a couple years. The Bluecoats bakery was cooking. "2006 doesn't even look like the same drum corps as 2004. Heck, they handle fabric better than Carolina Crown of 2022. Sorry, Crown. It's the way they move and play. Their show is eons better than just 2 years before, and it ushered in the corps' first top 4 placement. But this success didn't continue in the same fashion in the years that followed. The creative team probably felt they had finally figured out the formula, but unfortunately, they couldn't reproduce that success. Until 2010, when the corps broke into the top 3 for the very first time. As cool as this show was, and as much as the corps tried to capitalize on the success of this season in the years that immediately followed, it felt once again like a lucky shot with no clear, repeatable formula in the competitive scene. The corps didn't climb over 5th in the years that followed until the show that you're probably all familiar with. "2014. What could have been another lucky shot into the top of DCI became the Bluecoats' catalyst and the beginning of their design formula. This show took an easy-to-understand concept, captivated the audience, and used electronics in new and exciting ways we never thought possible. The pitch bend and the ending in particular were really the marks of a monumental and historic drum corps show. The Bluecoats became the masters of general effect. They placed second right behind the Blue Devils that year, and corps history was made. As someone who was there that night at Finals Retreat, the energy from the members was absolutely electric. Not so much for us cadets. The Bluecoats kept this momentum going in 2015 with Kinetic Noise, placing 3rd, proving that they had this formula figured out. And then 2016 happened, and the activity was changed forever. This was their first World Championship. After this, uniforms became costumes, dance was bigger than ever for all performers, electronics were a must, and it was no longer just good enough to march and play well. You had to have an it factor if you wanted to win. With the exception of 2017, the corps continued to place in the top 3 to present day, at the time of this recording. That's crazy consistency after winning your very first World Championship title. But how did this monumental launch in both success and design formula occur? We saw the Bluecoats rocket continue to take off over the course of years. But what led to building it and ensuring that it would soar for many, many years to come? Well, the short story is, it's the staff. You can't have a high-quality drum corps show without a high-quality teaching staff and a high-quality design team. Leading into 2016's massive launch upward, many staple staff members remained in place. We're talking about the director, David Glasgow, Doug Thrower, the composer and brass designer, and Tom Rarick, the composer and percussion designer. But there were a few additions and a few promotions of some individuals in the 2014 to 2016 era that really set that success apart from prior years. These folks were the rocket fuel poured on that helped the Bluecoats rocket reach the stars. Those individuals were Dean Westman, who was promoted to program coordinator in 2013. He was previously the music consultant in 2011 and the music coordinator in 2012. Dean Westman has previously been a Cavaliers brass caption head and a Cadets brass caption head and has arranged brass music for Santa Clara Vanguard at a certain point. And the man is the orchestra director at Avon High School, and he does a lot there. So he's very well versed in all things marching arts. John Vanderkoff was their artistic director and visual designer starting in 2013. He's known for his previous experience with Blast, along with the hiring of Jim Moore. Jim Moore was hired as the color guard designer and caption supervisor for 2013. And he also came from the realm of Blast, along with John Vanderkoff. Greg Lagola was their guard choreographer in 2013 and became their costume designer in 2014. He had a background in fashion design, so that really came into creating the Bluecoats' iconic look over the course of those years. Vince Oliver was hired as sound designer and music coordinator for 2014. He was a percussionist in Blast. Aaron Beck was hired as their audio systems consultant in 2015 and became their audio systems designer in 2016. He's had experience on Broadway as a professional audio engineer for the likes of The Lion King and Mamma Mia. But he also had experience in Cirque du Soleil. Having a majority of these staff members come in this 2014 to 2016 era really allowed the Bluecoats to incubate and the staff to kind of work together and fire on all cylinders until you get to the production that was 2016's Downside Up. Staff make a huge difference. Let's pause for a second so I can prove a point. All right, so let's look at 2016 Boston Crusaders. Okay, now look at 2017 Boston Crusaders.
Now she must burn.
These two don't even look like the same drum corps. What happened? Between 2016 and 2017, Boston Crusaders took much of Carolina Crown's visual staff, really the guard staff, and took the award-winning Cadets brass staff, brought them together, hired them, and they became the 2017 Boston Crusaders staff. And they're still pretty much intact to this day. It's why Boston is doing so well. And as a result, what happened to the placement from 2016 to 2017 for the Boston Crusaders? That's right, they went from 12th to 6th. Staff can truly make or break a drum corps. But I still don't feel like we have the complete picture. There's still one more puzzle piece missing from this Bluecoats success puzzle. The culture of an organization is set from the top down. Look at any organization, a CEO, a principal, a superintendent, a band director, a drum corps director. Check their values and how they're instilled to run the organization. In 2004, David Glasgow was hired as the first full-time director of the Bluecoats. But before that, he was a drum major for the group, an assistant director for the group for some time. His heart was clearly with the Bluecoats and always considered what was best for its members and staff. He got full-time pay to do what he was passionate about and good at. And as you'll see soon enough, that dripped down to his staff as well. But his success as the director came long before he ever took the position because of the leaders that came before him. For example, Ted Swaldo was the director from 1984 to 1992. He was instrumental in hiring David Glasgow as the first full-time director. Glasgow's predecessor, Bill Hamilton, directed the Corps and then transitioned to the role of program director in 2004, offering insight and advice to Glasgow. And finally, Larry Hirschman, the longtime program director, moved to a permanent advisor role to the staff and management. Do you get what I'm poking out here? There was always a plan for succession. Each leader began investing into who would become the next leader so that they would take their place, and then continue to offer them advice as an advisor so that there was always somebody qualified to take care of the Bluecoats. Glasgow continued this legacy for his successors in 2018, Mike Scott and Genevieve Geisler. This whole bigger than just me mentality at Bluecoats really fueled their success. Glasgow never came across as someone who was arrogant or just had to have control. Instead, well, just watch this.
Well, one of the philosophies that I've always had personally along the way, and have kind of been able to cultivate that along the way, was that I always wanted to take a real honest look at the talents of the people that we had, no matter who they were, and try to set up the culture and the organization such that it would allow them to do what they're best at. And so I think that lesson that I learned along the way really helped in this situation, because, when we brought John and Jim and Greg in, right away I knew that this is, where they're going to really succeed is to allow them to do something that's totally unique and totally different, to utilize props, to utilize the staging process. And so I didn't want to get in that way at all. We set up our organization to build upon the strengths of the amazing people that we had, and magic happened and will continue to happen, as we go forward.
And John Vanderkoff had this to say about Glasgow in the exact same call.
Since my time here, Dave has never said no. Never said no. And it doesn't mean we get to do everything we want, but it means it's always open to try. You know what I mean? And that's just been the coolest, absolute coolest thing, is just to live in that environment. And I know he busts his butt to make sure all our crazy stuff could happen. And I know he's super nervous, but, I think as time went on, the trust became more.
How do you keep a really great staff? Well, they have to feel like their jobs mean something, like they're valued in what they do. And I'm gonna steal this from Ali Abdal, who's a productivity YouTuber and a doctor turned entrepreneur, and he's also an author. He says that there are 3 key things that employees need to feel like they are fulfilled in their work. They need autonomy, which is a sense of ownership over what they're doing. They need mastery, like they feel like they're leveling up their skills. They're not just staying stagnant. They're always getting better at what they're doing. And thirdly, they need to feel like what they do is purposeful, like there is a reason for what they're doing and that their work just it has a meaning, it's valued. Glasgow really gave this to his entire staff. You continue to watch this call, and feel free to, I'll link it down below. As you watch, you will see staff members and caption heads talk about how they exchange scores and collaboratively work with one another. It's just so beautiful to see that no one's ego ever got in the way. And that's really all thanks to the leadership of David Glasgow. Listen to what he has to say about his staff.
It's never about, well, I'm just going to teach the horns. I'm just going to teach the drums. I'm just going to teach the guard. And this actually goes down to the tech staff as well. And just because the sheer production of it and just how big it was, everyone truly said, I don't care what I do. I don't care what job I have. I'm focused on just making it all work and doing it together. And we would never been able to pull it off with their ability to kind of be able to figure out so many of these, challenges, and then work so hard as a team and kind of throw their ego out the window and say, we're just going to all work together to figure out. And that's still going. And that was something that really just allowed this whole thing to happen the way it did, because it's an immense amount of logistics.
Just wow. I marched in cadets and I loved my experience in that drum corps, but we did not have this kind of mentality from the top down in terms of leadership. I started the research for this video just trying to figure out how the Bluecoats became a contender and how they continuously placed well. And in reality, what I found out was how any organization can become a contender and how they can consistently perform well at whatever it is that they do. It all starts with leadership and how they set up a culture of collaboration, a culture that allows their staff members to succeed at exactly what they're best at and highlight their strengths. It's a culture that trickles down to its members and makes them successful as well. And leadership has to realize that the organization is bigger than just them. They have to have a plan for training people up to come after them. So just like the 2014 show, Tilt was the show that acted as a catalyst for change in the Bluecoats, so was David Glasgow behind the scenes for the organization internally. Neither alone could have made the impact they did by themselves, but because of those that came before and those that come after, their legacy continues to give back to the Bluecoats organization and drum corps as a whole. So, regardless of what color coat they may be wearing, I have no doubt that the Bluecoats will continue to be a contender in drum corps because of what the organization has been setting up since 2004. Thanks for joining me on this awesome Bluecoats research journey. If you like this video, you might like this other one where I talk about 5 drum corps conspiracies that probably most certainly aren't true, but it's really entertaining to talk about them, so go ahead and click there. And if you have a friend that maybe you want to introduce to drum corps that has no idea what it is, well, I have a video for that too. And if you made it to the end, congratulations. We're gonna spam the comment section with "I'm still tilted." Yeah, I guess until next time. We'll catch you guys later.